Even if you got a perfect score on a section, watch, because on the second time that you see this information, I might not accept that answer. The first time around, I'm a little more lenient as to what I'll accept as an answer. So even if you got 100 on section, pay attention, make sure that it matches exactly with what I've got. If you're having trouble, try something different. Try what I'm doing. When I see problems like this, and I do because I take graduate courses every semester, and I have to do work like this, it's just on a slightly higher level. I underline, I circle. If I see the word products, what operation am I talking about?
Multiplication.
Multiplication. Put a dot, if that helps you. How about cube roots? When you see the word roots, what does that make you think of? What should you be drawing? But it's a cube root. It's not a regular root. So you need to put a little 3 in there. Where's the 7 go?
On the outside.
It doesn't go on the inside. It's only the cube root of x. It's not the cube root of the 7. If I see less than, that is the one exception where you reverse the order. Switch the order. It's still subtraction, but the square root of y goes in the front. The 12 goes at the end. Take a look at what you have. Did you reverse the order? Did you have 12 in front? Did you make the 12 and the y underneath the radical? It's only the square root of y. If it helps you to draw arrows to each thing. How about sum? We're still getting people who are not writing sum correctly. Yes. Yes. Just put it onto the correction sheet. Sum. I'm immediately starting off with my plus symbol. B squared twice A. Twice A is 2C. Some people are making that into an exponent, and that shouldn't be an exponent. That's just twice A. Oh, 2A. Thank you. If you have the luck to have a multiple choice problem in front of you, cross out what doesn't work. If I have this, that's addition, correct? So do I want to decrease anything? No. Cross it out. Decreased would be subtraction. What does less than mean? Subtraction. I don't want that. What does quotient mean? That means division. Increased by is my plus. That's the one that works. That's the one I want. So by process of elimination, I'm down to D. If I see more than, I'm talking addition. John's age is 6 more than 3 times Mary's age. 3M. You could have written it 3M plus 6. Yes.
Okay, so
If it's half right, it's half wrong, and you put it onto your correction. I'm just going to write down the answers to the next 5. 17, 627, 19.5. If you get a decimal, you get a decimal. Most of your answers the rest of the way are going to be decimals. Real life does not work out evenly. Take a look up front. The most often occurring mistake was right here. If you square anything, is it going to be positive or negative?
Positive.
Positive. Some of you are just writing down whatever shows up on the calculator, and the calculator lies all the time. That should be a positive 16. From that, you should get 17. Here, what is 5 to the 4th? What's 5 times 5 times 5 times 5? What do I get here?
Oh.
How much?
600.
625? Take a look. What went wrong if you got that one wrong? 5 to the 4th should be 625. If you're not getting these little pieces, come up to my desk later on. We'll take a look at why you're not getting the chunks right. This is 49 minus 10 over 2. If you get 39 over 2, that was an okay answer, if you had that. But, more than likely on a test, an SOL test, you're going to see 19.5. If it works out to a decimal, write it down. Some people are still not following order of operations. Division is just as important as multiplication, so you just go left to right. I have to do 18 first, then times the 3 to get my 54. So take a look. Did you do 2 times 3 first? You should be going left to right. And the last one, you do that subtraction 10 minus 9. What is 1 to any power? 1. 1. 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. Doesn't matter. You're going to get 1. Some people wrote 4 down. We need 12 plus 5 minus 1. But we still have this 3 out here. So this is 4 to the 3rd. That should be 64. That should be 76. Take a look. Did you change that 1 to the 4th to just 1? Did you change 4 to the 3rd into 64? All of this is kind of useless right now until we put it into these multi-step equations that we're going to be doing for the next week. Page 2. If you are having trouble, do what I do. Show parentheses when you do substitution. I'm putting a -6 in there, I show parentheses. It doesn't mean do that first, it just means I'm putting something there. I'm putting something where the K is. I'm putting something where the T is. Don't do it all at once. I break this up into 3 chunks. I deal with this first. I got 3 times 36 there. That's 108. So I'm just dealing with that front portion. That's 36, and that together is 108. Look at just this middle portion here. If you just had to do -2 times 2 times -6, what would you get? Positive or negative? Positive. You should be getting a plus 24 out of all that. Take a look. What went wrong? Did you have a negative 24 there? All of these ended up being positive and you ended up with 136. Put brackets around the top of every fraction you see. Even if they're not there, you should do all the work on the top first. So I'm going to ignore the bottom. I'm just going to look at 7 times negative 3. And that's equal to negative 21. Now I'll do the bottom. 7, 7. I should be getting a negative 3. Don't try to jam it in the calculator all at once. The calculator doesn't understand that the 7 is dividing everything. Sometimes it'll not do order of operations when you think it is. Absolute value. Don't forget that at the end, everything changes to a positive. But you do that after you've done all the work. Don't change these to decimals. You don't need to. It'll only cause problems. Put it into the calculator exactly how you see it. 24 times, parentheses, 1 divided by 3, parentheses. You will get, in this case, an exact answer. An 8 minus 10. That is negative 2. We've got a 2 minus 5. Is that right?
No,
Plus 5? Oh, is that a plus in there?
yeah.
Plus there, plus there. So that's 7. So here's what we got. Negative 2, absolute value. 7, absolute value. Don't add these together yet. We do the absolute value. What's the absolute value of a negative 2? You just make it positive. That's already positive. What's 2 plus 7? 9. Absolute value is really used in upper level courses when we're talking about distances. If I say that I live 5 miles from you, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Does I live negative 5 miles from you make sense? No. So that's why that's used later on when we're in an upper level math course. That'll actually have some sort of meaning. Right now, you just got to know how to recognize it. Chunks. I don't do the whole problem. I focus on this first. That turns out to be 12. Then I take a look at the second part. 108 over 4. That's 27. That's 39. This became this. 8 plus negative 4 became that. Don't try to put 12 plus 108 divided by 4 in the calculator all at once. Work out that fraction to be 27, then add those up, step by step. You're not going to see these first 3 again as 3 separate sections, but I might throw in one question on this, on the next test. There's always overlap from test to test. Last one. Cube roots. Does everybody know how to do this? Where is that on the calculator? Math button. 9 goes here. The whole thing is squared. So we have 9 times, you said 4?
Yeah.
So this right here, this entire chunk, became 4. You still have to do the work inside, that's 36, and then that turns out to be 1296. Take a look. Where did you make your mistake? You will see something like this on the next test. The majority of the next test is equation sum, but you will see everything that's on here in some form or another. What do you think was the worst section on the test?
The next section.
The next section. Because people did not look at this sheet that I gave them. This has every property that you need. Some people were a little bit confused as to where to place their answers. That's easily fixed. Next page. Take a look. Take this out. Take out your little chart on properties of equality. Which one of those top properties looks like this? There's 1, 2, 3, 4 properties at the very top here. Which one looks like number 1 on this page? Transitive. You are required to memorize some things. This will not appear on your formula sheet for the SOL. Do you want? Down here, I wanted you to do the work over here and then write your property over here. So, what would you do first? 9 times 1. So what I would do is I would point to what I'm doing. I'm doing this. What's the answer to that? 9. Over here you write down what property goes with that. What property says you multiply times 1 and you get the same number? Take a look at your sheet. That is identity, but what property? Multiplication. If you just wrote multiplication, identity, that would have been enough. So whatever the reason is for that step, that's what you write down. What's the reason or property for taking this and replacing it with 36? Substitution. Don't overthink this. Most of the time, you're just doing substitution. The only times you're not doing substitution is when you're grouping things, putting parentheses in. Sometimes if you see multiplication with a 1, what other number is an important number besides 1? 0. Those are the times when you have to start thinking. Otherwise, it's just substitution. Like in number 3, if I do this first, what's 20 plus 0? Plus 0? 20. And I just show one step at a time. What do we call it? We don't call it adding with 0. What do we call it? Additive identity. When you multiply by 1, that's multiplicative identity. When you add 0, that's additive identity. What would you do next? You do this next, and that would be 54. What do we call it when we replace something with something else? Substitution. And I would then add that would be 4. What do we call it when you replace something? Substitution. So we did this now. Substitution. So we did this, then we did this. Whatever it is that you're doing, you write down why you did it, or what the name of it is. Down here, I did all the work. I did every step. The only thing that happened here was this went here, and this went here. What do we call it when you move things around? Take a look at your property sheets. What thing? I heard it? Commutative. And if you see plus 1/2 next to something, that means that you got at least one of the properties correct, but not all of them. Commutative. What do we call it when we start throwing in parentheses? We have a technical name for that. Associative. So when you see things start to move around, we call that commutative. When you start to see parentheses, that's associative. What do we call it when we replace this? What word did I use? Replace. Substitution. We're not doing anything interesting, so we just call it substitution. What about 9 plus 9 to 18? More substitution. Substitution is our general term for all the other stuff. Whether it's addition, multiplication, division, yes. No, identity would mean that the 9 stayed a 9. Like here. Or the 20 remained a 20. Down here, you had to show both. You do it one step at a time. What's the first thing you would do in number 5?
Make the same chart for the
What's the first operation you would do?
4 plus 4 times 2.
4 times 2, right here. What's 4 times 2? 8. Just write out the rest of it. I don't want you to do any more work. What did we do? What would you call it? Substitution. We took 4 and 2 and made it an 8. That's just substitution. What do you want to do next? 6 times 8.
48.
That's 48. So we did this right here, and that became 48. I'm going to leave all the rest of the stuff here. Whoops, no, we can't do that. Because we have this right here. Get rid of that. We still have parentheses here, so I got to do the 8 minus 7. 6 and plus 5. What do we call it when we take 8 minus 7 and make a 1? Substitution. Don't overthink this. Substitution is the one you're using most often. It's sort of our general property. Now, what do you want to do? 6 times 1. Anytime a 1 shows up in the operation, chances are something's happening. What do we call that? Multiplicative identity. What we just did there, this right here, the 6 times the 1, that's just like the 9 times the 1. Multiplicative identity, multiplicative identity. If you do all of this, 5 times 1 over 5, you will get a 1. What do we call that? Take a look at your sheets. What do we call it when you have a flipped version of one thing and you multiply it together and you get a 1?
Oh wait, what was the question?
We have a 5, and then we have the reciprocal, which is 1 over 5. What's that called when you multiply those together? Take a look at the bottom of your paper. Which one of those properties looks like that? Where you have fractions multiplying each other and they're
Inverse.
inverse. What kind of inverse? Multiplication. Anytime you've got fractions that are flipped versions, reciprocals, that's what that's called, multiplicative inverse. What's 6 plus 1? 7. What did we do? Substitution. Substitution's going to come up most often. What is 7 times 0?
0.
That is special. What do we call that?
0.
Multiplication property of of 0. That is the very last property on the bottom of this sheet. You are going to see a section like this at the beginning of your next test. Looks exactly like this. I'll change around some numbers a little bit, but the properties don't change. And they're all on here. We'll have another practice day before we get to the test. We'll go over a few more of these. Can you improve on your first score? Yes. If we go around the room, if I took everybody's tests and tried to make one big test out of it, their class would get 100. Because somebody in here got 100 on the first section of the test. Somebody in here got 100 on the second section. Somebody in here got 100 on the third one. It wasn't always the same person, but somebody in here got 100 on every single section. So, if you do a little more studying, I'm showing you exactly what you need in order to be successful on the test. Because somebody's doing it on every single section. Some people did it, some people got hundreds. How many people got hundreds on at least one section? Raise your hand. All right. Anybody get hundreds on 2 sections? All right. So it's out there. The knowledge is out there. Some people weren't here. Who wasn't here to learn what we were doing? Franklin was absent. We had some people absent. Make sure that you're coming in on Tuesdays if you need help. And I know who's been absent. You're going to get a second chance at some of these topics and get a recess. We just got to get it done before the end of the course. Next section. What I did like seeing was that people did pretty good at these. If they knew what they were doing, they got 80s or 100s. If you didn't know what you're doing, you got 0s. Up here, write down, do not change exponents for like terms. We are not changing anything here with the exponents because there isn't any multiplication. What's the only thing happening in 1 through 5 up here? What operations? It's not multiplication. What is it? Add and subtract. So I'm just going to write down add and subtract. When you get to the ones below, then we might change the exponents. So some of you were writing down 5w and 2w was 3w squared. Is that right? No. We don't want to change the exponents. That's just 3w. Let me write down answers. 3w plus 8k plus 4. Thank you. This section is apples, oranges, and grapes. Here's your apples. 5 apples minus 2 apples. Here's your oranges. 9K minus K. 8K. And my grapes. Here's my grapes. All I have is plus 4. That goes at the end. Only combine what looks the same. The ordering doesn't really matter. It could be, you could have the 8K first and the 3W second. What matters is the sign in front of them. Make sure that's positive, positive, positive. That should be negative. That should be negative. That should be positive. Ordering doesn't really matter. It's considered better to put higher exponents to the left. And that's how it will show up on the SOL test. But if you had the 5f squared first, that's fine.
That was right.
Yes, but you were supposed to combine it with this to make it, let me see here. Basically, that's correct, but that 4m3 should have vanished away. Because you had already combined it right here with the 6 to make that. Take a look. Where did you go wrong? Did you start fiddling around with the exponents? Notice, f squared, still f squared. W squared, still w squared. All I'm doing is adding and subtracting in this section. Exponents are not affected. Anybody get 100 on this section? We got a couple people who got hundreds. You're going to see the second part of your next test. We'll have this again. If you do better on that, I change the grade. I changed everybody's grades on the quizzes if it was better. Down here, sure. I'll leave it up for a second. What does distribution really mean? What operation are you going to have to do? What operation is that? What are you doing? Distributing what? Division?
No multiplication.
Write that down. Circle those together. If I have distribution written down, or if you see distribution, that means you're going to be multiplying. What I think of as multiplication here, I put a little 1 there. Or let me rewrite this. I'll make this look like that. I'll put a little -1 in front, and I do distribution. I multiply that -1 times this, times this. Now I've got -9x squared. What's a negative times a negative?
Positive.
So that second part, because you're subtracting it, that becomes a negative, that becomes a positive. This doesn't change. Now, you're just doing what you did up top. Now it's apples and oranges. What looks the same here?
The 4x squared minus the x squared.
What looks the same here? 7x and 7x. What is that? 1 second. Number 2, after, yes.
Oh, for number 1,
Mhm.
that's really weird to word it. The -5, you put it behind the 14, just put negative. Like, it would be subtraction.
Yes. It's considered better form to have it in front because it's got the
I put
higher
it
power.
behind here, I put addition.
Don't do that.
So,
Does your next line look like this? After you do the distribution, did you get -6C, -6D, 8C, 32D? For some reason, people didn't have 32D there. 8 times 4, 32. Combine. This combines with this. This combines with that. I'm getting 2C plus 26D. Once you've done the multiplication, now it's just like the problems above. Keep these as fractions. Do 1/3 in parentheses. I would do this. Keep it in parentheses. That's a -3/8. Multiply it, you will get 5x plus 7 minus 9x plus 6. Take a look. Did your multiplication result in that? If you put -3/8 in your calculator and multiply it by -16, you will get a +6. Then combine your like terms. That goes with that. 7 and 6, 13. Are you figuring out what you did wrong? Up until this point, we haven't done anything with the exponents. Now we are. What is y squared times a y? How many y's do I have now?
Y cubed.
Y to the third. When you start to multiply exponents with exponents, you add them up. Y squared and the y is y3. I still have the -4 in front. The other one doesn't have a y, so I just put y squared. Is the 6y squared inside here? No, it's just on the end. So I did 2 multiplications here. Now I start combining. What looks the same? Does anything have a 3 in it? Just that thing in the beginning. So I'm writing down that. These two I can combine. What's 5 minus 6? -1. If you put a 1 here, it's not wrong. But do we need it?
No.
I don't need it. It's not wrong, but I don't need it. Last one. I've got to multiply 5 times. 1, 2. Then I multiply 1, 2, 3. Actually, I'm going over this right now. If I do those multiplications, I get a b squared out of it. B times b. I've got a -2 there. -2 times each of those results in this. take a look. Did your multiplication result in those positives and negatives? Negative 2 times b squared is negative 2b squared. Negative 2 times a negative. Negative 2 times a negative. Those last ones are positives because it's a negative times a negative. Did I have b squared at the beginning? No. When you multiply letters times letters, variables times variables, your exponent changes. Now I'm going to combine this and this. What's a negative 20 and then another minus 2? Negative 22b squared. What is minus 12 plus 14? And it's a 2b. Apples, oranges, and grapes. How many grapes do I have? 8 grapes. It's all fruit. Can you see what you did wrong? You will see those last 3 sections on the next test. Properties, like terms, and then distribution. Everything I just went over has now been made into a video. You can go online. You see the red line around that? Right now it's being recorded. This is picking up my voice. It usually doesn't pick up your voice. It's not that powerful enough a microphone.